Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ann Arbor District Library. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are so pleased to once again partner with our friends at Literati to bring us a wonderful event with Jocelyn Benson and her new book, The Purposeful Warrior, and she's joined in conversation with Barbara McQuade. As you all, I am sure, know, Jocelyn Benson is our Michigan Secretary of State. And Professor Barbara McQuade is professor at the U of M Law School. Welcome back to AADL. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We have passed around some index cards for taking questions. So my colleague Beth and I, we will be making the rounds during the event to collect those cards. And if you didn't get one, you can just raise your hand at some point during the event and we can get one to you. We will be having a signing after the event, and the signing line is going to start back there and wrap around and come up here. We're expecting some length to it. At any point during or after the event, you can go to the table in the back and purchase a book from our friends at Literati. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to our distinguished guests. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, and so delighted to be here at the Ann Arbor District Library. Thank you all for being here. I do want to note, Madam Secretary of State, that not only do we have a big crowd in the audience, we also have people up in the skyboxes. Hello in the skyboxes. They're packing the house for our Secretary of State. I hope you all took a number when you came in or made an appointment so that you don't have to wait in line for more than 20 minutes, which is what Secretary Benson is very proud of at our Secretary of State's offices. We are delighted that you're here. I have read this book. It's a fantastic read. You learn a lot about Jocelyn Benson, but even more importantly, you learn about how to solve problems in this political moment, which is, I think, something all of us yearn to do, to figure out a better way to get back to the American values that we all so treasure. So I want to jump right into it, if I may, and start asking with about the title, The Purposeful Warrior. And look, she's got this look, like, you know, like I'm ready for the bring it on, right? She's wearing the leather jacket, you know, bring it, The Purposeful Warrior. You know, when I hear warrior, I hear fight, I hear combat, I hear division, but you have a very different view of warrior. And I'm wondering if you couldn't just begin by talking with us about what you mean by the purposeful warrior.
Yeah, well, first, thank you all for being here tonight. It's really an honor to be joining you and so many great friends to have this really important conversation, because I know we're in a very tumultuous moment in our country and in our state. A lot of folks are struggling. A lot of people are feeling the fear, the uncertainty, the chaos, the cruelty of this moment. And I believe, and this is why I ultimately wrote this book, that the way out of this moment can be found within all of us. And indeed, history teaches us that by being warriors for the values that we share and our hope for a better, more peaceful world, prosperous world where everyone can thrive, it really begins and ends with our determination and willingness to step up and be part of the solution in a very intentional, pragmatic way. And that's the essence of being a purposeful warrior. It's about being committed, being focused, being pragmatic, being practical, and also unyielding in fighting for what you believe in. And it's in some ways perhaps a paradox to be purposeful and a warrior, but to me it flows because it doesn't do much good to just fight, but if you can oftentimes. But history is filled with stories of fighting for a purpose with a mission in mind. Oftentimes, and I write about this in the book, that mission is for improving other people's lives, making others' lives easier. But the book starts with a quote that says, being a warrior means being authentic as well. Being authentic to you and the fight that you have within you that is just waiting to be unleashed. So being a warrior, I think, is a call to action for all of us. Being purposeful is about being intentional, focused, and frankly, getting things done. And it sort of underscored with the essence of someone who, like myself, wanted to fight to change a lot of things throughout my life, but I didn't want to waste my time. I actually wanted to move the needle. I actually wanted to get something done. And the book is full of stories of sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have spoken up and engaged in fights and we haven't been successful. At least it didn't seem like that in the immediate aftermath, but over time it can be. So we'll get into more of that, but the essence of being a warrior, being a purposeful warrior, is being someone who fights with authenticity, sincerity, and intention and practicality to move the needle on the issue that you care about, whether it's standing up for yourself, standing up for your kids, standing up for your parents, standing up for your loved ones, standing up for your community, for other communities, for marginalized communities, however you define it, fighting for a better world, fighting for yourself and our communities and our nation. That is what has always made our nation great and what will continue to be into the future if we choose to embrace that warrior spirit we all have within us.
And I noticed, lest anybody miss the title of your book, you're wearing a shirt that actually says warrior on it. Some good marketing. If I were to have a shirt, mine would probably actually say worrier, because that's more who I am. But I actually want to ask you about that, because the subtitle of your book is Standing Up for What's Right When the Stakes Are High. And it seems to me that at this moment, we have people who are worried and are hiding, right? I mean, I think about all the law firms that have capitulated to Donald Trump's demands. I mean, it really disgusts me when you see him make false accusations, and some of the law firms have filed lawsuits and stood up to him, but most have not and have capitulated and given away millions of dollars of pro bono legal services. We're seeing some universities capitulate. Members of Congress capitulate. And I think it's because they're warriors, they're fearful. And when there are real stakes, real people who, real consequences for speaking out, it's dangerous. What do you say to people who say, look, I agree with you, but it's just too hot right now. I will lose my clients. I will lose my livelihood. I could lose my job, and my family depends on that. What do you say to people who find themselves in that situation?
Well, let's take a step back and say the reason that subtitle resonates with me and I use it is because it's easy to stand up for what you believe in when no one's coming for you, right? It's easy to fight for democracy when you don't have an armed mob of protesters outside your home, right? And so really the essence in me, in my view, of being a warrior and actually moving the needle, right? Actually getting things done means you have to sign up for engaging in the fight for what you believe in, standing up for what's right when it's hard to do so. That's the essence of actually fighting for what you believe in. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. And it is a hard moment for us to stand up for democracy, for truth, for the law. But if we don't, in a moment like this, then everything is going to fall apart. The only thing that has made our democracy work over time, I have lived this firsthand, and there are plenty of stories in the book about this, wasn't me as Secretary of State standing guard over our election results in 2020. It was all of you. It was people showing up to vote and then show up to county canvassers meetings and say, hey, you need to follow the law here and certify this election. The people of democracy have always been what makes democracy strong. The people of the law is what makes the law strong. Indeed, in a moment like this, our courts and our legal system are perhaps one of the most critical guardrails to hold on to in this challenging time. That's why those trying to dismantle who we are and our Constitution and people who don't want to follow the law or respect the Constitution are going after the very firms that can hold them accountable. Just like you see attacks on democracy when folks in power don't want to be held accountable, right? Then you dismantle the mechanism for accountability. But that mechanism will only be dismantled if we bend the knee, if we say, it's too hard, I'm scared, I'm out. Everyone has the ability to do that. My call is just to say, if you do that, and if we all do that, then the American experiment of democracy and the rule of law and the Constitution is going to wither on the vine. It will be, as Ben Franklin said, a republic only if we can keep it. So in terms of the answer in this moment, the answer is, again, with all of us choosing to stay engaged. One of the things that Senator Slotkin has said recently that I really resonated with me is that none of us would be here if those who've come before us chose to give up when it got hard, right? And so it's on us in this moment to not give up either. And so in that regard, when I look at the law firms that are abdicating their responsibility, what I see is not just the immediate decision they're making and perhaps the benefit or ramifications for their own business, but also the ramifications for the entire legal industry and the signal that it sends. I say this as a former law dean, you're a law professor, the signal that it sends to everyone in the legal industry that the rule of law is something you can walk away from when you're scared. That's not what the rule of law is. The rule of law is something you stand up for, especially when you're scared. So to me in this moment, I mean, I will go as far as to say I don't think you deserve to have all of the credence that comes with a legal position or a political position if you're not willing to stand up for your values and the rule of law and the Constitution when it matters most.
Yeah, and speaking about those things, we've seen, right here at our university, what I thought was an abandonment of our values. DEI was embedded in our values. We had 6 core values. 3 of them were diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when things got hot, suddenly we ran from them. And I'm not proud of that. I think that was a terrible capitulation. As you said, it's easy to claim you're for certain things in easy times. You share in your book some very personal, hard times that you have had. Things I didn't know about you before, and I know you pretty well. You share a story of a lost pregnancy. You share a story of sexual harassment. And so there are times in our lives when we face those difficult, frightening moments. And I'm wondering if you can just share with us how maybe you, in those moments of personal distress, when things seemed uncertain and scary and you figured out a way out of it, are there lessons to be drawn from that we can use in this moment?
Yes, many. And I share these 2 stories in particular that are very personal in an effort to say, look, I can sit up here all day and talk about how I stood up to the President of the United States and share stories about that. And we succeeded, right? Democracy prevailed. But there are times in which I fought and have not been successful. There are times in which I saw an injustice and I didn't know what to do about it. And one of it that was most sort of effective to me was when I was dealing with a very toxic work environment as a young dean of a law school. And as someone who went to Wellesley and thought I would always know what I would do in a situation like that, I didn't know what to do. And that in and of itself was important for me to be upfront and honest about, because as I was going through it, I thought, wow, how many other folks don't think they're ever going to have to deal with something like this or a toxic workplace? And then when we get there, we realize we're ill-equipped and unprepared, even though we would have thought we'd know exactly what to do. What helped me out of it were other women, young and old, who had gone through this or were going through it at the same way in different scenarios. What helped me through it was not staying silent. That in fact, the only thing I needed to do to begin to find my way out of it was to speak up and to say something. And I talk about how I spoke up and said something to some superiors within the university and nothing happened. To say, like, look, yeah, sometimes you're going to speak out against an injustice and the people who you think would do something about it are going to fail you. And that happens. But that doesn't mean to not speak out. What I also found, and I recount a really powerful story, I talked to a lot of folks who didn't have good advice. And I talked to a woman named Carolyn Casson, who runs Michigan Women's Forward, who had advice that was so good that it still stays with me today. And it wasn't an answer, but she simply said, one, how disappointed she was that something she went through as a business leader in the 70s was still happening today. And in relation to that, she said, think about everyone who has more power than you, who has more authority than you, more wisdom and experience than you, and realize that they've probably gone through what you've gone through too. So talk to them just about your experience so that they know that it's still happening. But more importantly, think about everyone who has less power and experience than you. Law students, others who were probably dealing with the same challenges in different ways but didn't have the same power or authority I had. Help them, listen to them, talk to them, find their way through it. And just by taking those steps, it helped me among other things, find the strength to tell my story more, to the point where, as I share in the book, others, when I was talking about it in a group setting, said, oh, that happened to me too. And then they shared their story. And someone said, that happened to me too. And then she asked for advice. And just by sharing these stories, by talking, we were able to figure out ways through our respective challenges. And the point is that even if I can't solve my particular path or challenge, I was able to help others find their way, and they in turn helped me feel like I wasn't alone and feel a little bit stronger. And to also, this is about grace in the book as well, forgive myself for not knowing what to do in that situation, which was part of the challenge. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but essentially it's the essence of the importance of sharing these stories. And years later, the Me Too movement became a calling for many to share stories and toppled down, significantly powerful institutions and men who were overseeing toxic industries and workplaces. So the power of your voice, even if you don't know how to use it, what to say, or who to say it to, there's still power in that. And sometimes you just have to be willing to speak out and take that first step, and then recognize that if you don't say anything, your silence will be filled by others who will want to tell your story for you, and you can't let that happen either.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very inspiring about the book is your commitment to, kind of serving others. That's, kind of a through line that I see there. And I think that's such a good lesson on this sexual harassment story, because I think when it's an individual decision, it's easy to stay silent, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can deal with it. I don't want trouble, but when you start thinking about, if this has happened to me, the same perpetrator is going to do it to others, and I have the ability to stop them, that's when I think you become powerful and you find your purpose. And you talk a lot in the book about serving others, public virtue, public service, things that probably all of us think are good things and have spent our lives devoted to. And yet we find ourselves in this moment when we hear from leaders that winning is all that matters, and making money is all that matters, and honor and integrity is for suckers. Is that right? I mean, when you meet voters, is that all voters care about anymore, or is there room for public virtue?
No, I think voters want to know that if they're relying on Medicaid or Medicare to pay their health bills or cover their prescriptions, that's still going to be there. People want to be able to know they can afford to buy a home in the community they want to live in, and that if they have a kid, that they're going to raise them in a community where they will be safe, where they'll be able to send them to quality schools, and where they will come home safe and alive. And when it comes to putting food on the table, it's not going to be a struggle, but it's going to be something that is accessible to all. So I think those issues are top of mind for folks in our state and nationwide. But in addition to that, in this moment, the struggles notwithstanding, what I'm also seeing is folks feel exhausted by all of the noise and the challenges and the misinformation. And that in and of itself can be a reason to say, I want to take a break. And what I talk about in the book is taking a break. First, do it. There's a whole chapter on finding purpose in rage and the importance of sitting with those feelings. But also at the same time, when we think about what it means to move forward, to succeed, to win, to define it not as a victory, even an electoral victory. I lost my first campaign, right? And thank goodness I did, because from that I learned how to be even more courageous when I was able to be successful as Secretary of State and be ready to stand up to defend democracy at a critical moment for our country's history. So part of it is allowing also challenging moments, losses, tragedies even, that are unexpected but occur, to be used as an opportunity for strength, for growth. For learning. And if we can start to see opportunities or if we can start to see challenges or tragedies or negative things or stumbling blocks that happen to us as simply opportunities to come back better, to be stronger, to help us hone our muscles so that we're ready for the next fight, then ultimately we start to welcome those challenges as simply a path towards strength. And so winning, to me, is about that. It's about learning to see the unexpected challenges that life will throw all of us as an opportunity to grow and become stronger. And then winning also means, to me, being mission-driven. How do I want to accomplish my goal? It doesn't mean a title or even money or pride or awards or recognition. It means, am I pound for pound making a tangible impact on the issues I care about and the people I want to help? And so I tell stories throughout the book in a chapter called Mission Driven about what that actually means, to be focused on results, success, improving people's lives, and using that to define what success and winning really is, as opposed to some of the things that perhaps other leaders are using right now to define success.
I want to talk about your work as Secretary of State, because I think it's really been extraordinary. You probably know that Jocelyn Benson was, before she was Secretary of State, was a law professor at Wayne State Law School. She later became the dean, but her area of expertise was election law. Incredibly important. She actually wrote a book on the Secretary of State position in America. And I know you talk about how you were really, I don't want to say impressed or moved, but struck by the power of the Secretary of State, which in some ways has been regarded as sort of a sleepy little office that takes care of the driver's licenses. But in the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore, when Katherine Harris was the Secretary of State in Florida, really had the power to change an election. So what was it about that position, Secretary of State, that caused you to run for it in 2018, begin serving in 2019, and then were there at the helm in 2020, such a pivotal election during the COVID pandemic, the election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden? I remember thinking, what an incredible, almost cosmic moment of this person who is so prepared to do this job, serving in this role in a moment when this job could change the outcome of an election. So what caused you to want to run for Secretary of State? Let's start there, and then I want to talk about your experiences in that role.
Well, my North Star has always been the voters. I think oftentimes, well, actually, let me just start by saying, I mean, who wouldn't want to run the DMV? Am I right? I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. But I'm really proud. It's another story also talked about in the book about making our Department of Motor Vehicles the most efficient in the country, eliminating wait times and all the rest. So government can work for you. And turns out part of getting people to believe in democracy and the power of their vote is also showing that government can work well for you, so that when you vote, it actually has an impact. It makes a difference. You can elect leaders who will make your life easier and save you time and save you money. And so to me, the opportunity to oversee this department that interacts with more residents than any other was a great chance. Again, challenge is an opportunity. It was a great challenge and an opportunity to demonstrate this proof of concept. Government actually can make your life easier. It can work for you. And I'm going to put her on the spot, but I want to shout out to Tina Anderson, the Chief of Staff at the Department of State, who shows up every day actually making sure those trains run on time. Thank you, Tina. Ann Arbor resident. So that said, the why, though, for me as Secretary of State was to be the chief election officer and demonstrate as well that democracy can work for everyone. And I'm really proud that two things. One, that citizens also elected, not just me in 2018, but many of you are part of this, amended our state constitution in 2018 to expand opportunities to vote from home, to expand opportunities to register vote at the Secretary of State's office and online and on Election Day itself, and also put citizens in charge of drawing the legislative districts in the state, eliminating gerrymandering. And so I got to thank you all for doing that.
I bet we have some people in the House who worked on voters, not politicians. Anybody? Show of hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because it was because of you that I was able to then come into office and implement all of these things. I used to say my entire legislative agenda has been enacted by the people and is now in our state constitution. My job as Secretary of State was just to implement it. So thank you. Because it was a great honor and still one of the greatest honors of my career to just come into office and set up our first ever citizens redistricting commission, independent of our office. And then secondly, in the midst of a pandemic, be able to give people the confidence and clarity that you could vote safely from home, and here's how. Of course, doing so invited the ire of the President of the United States, but that's, again, what I signed up for, I guess. But at the same time, it provided us as an opportunity as a state to show the nation that when you implement these good government policies, lo and behold, we had the highest turnout election in our state's history at that point, even in the midst of a pandemic. So to me, I love this job because I get to wake up every day, number one, trying to make government work well for everyone, down to the granular level, for your kids who turn 16 and need a driver's license and everyone in between. And secondly, I get to show up every day saying, how can I make democracy real for everyone, no matter who you vote for or where you live? And then to see the results. I had two goals when I came into office: decrease wait times and increase voter turnout. We've done both. And now we've had back-to-back highest turnout elections in our state history. Instead of being ranked 31st in the country, we're number 2 for fair and safe and secure elections nationwide. We consistently now not only break our own records with higher turnout in every election, but we lead the nation. We're one of the top 3 states in the country for youth vote turnout and for overall voter turnout. Like, great success. But I say all that to say I was a happy and willing administrator to help make all of this work, but it was really you all and the voters of Michigan who enabled all this to happen by voting to amend our Constitution to modernize our democracy. So it's been an honor to be a part of that, but it's not been without the warriors of Michigan, the people on the ground, the voters who've made everything work. So my why is my North Star. How can I make everything work better for you all? And when we work together to do that, turns out we can achieve great things.
Absolutely. Well, as the parent of a daughter who turned 16 during the 2020 COVID pandemic and was concerned about her ability to get her driver's license, I thank you for keeping the...
for helping her get on the road.
Yeah, keeping the offices open. So I remember when you were an election law professor and then dean at Wayne Law School, you had a number of events. She's very much a voting rights geek. You have been to Selma to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You worked at the Southern Poverty Law Center, and you even had a ceremony where I think you planted a tree in honor of Viola Luza, the Michigan woman who went down to Alabama to register voters and did not come back. Can you tell us about where that interest came from, that deep interest in the voting rights movement of the 1960s?
Well, my parents were special education teachers. And so I learned from them at an early age how important it is, not just to fight to make sure everyone has a voice, but how important it is to make sure everyone has a voice at the table. That the best decisions we could make as a society, as a school, as an institution, is when every voice is heard and everyone has a seat. And I was always moved by the fact that in our Constitution, we don't necessarily have a promise of economic prosperity for all, but we do have a promise of voting power for all, that one person, one vote promise. And I was moved by the fact that the civil rights movement sought to eradicate several vestiges of inequality. And the perhaps crowning achievement of the movement was the Voting Rights Act, because if you have access to the vote, then you have access to power to do everything else. And so I thought, well, why don't I just start there? Why don't I just start with continuing the work of those who stood at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama in March of 1965, marching forward into a sea of uncertainty and in some cases very certain violence, with Alabama state troopers waiting there with billy clubs and tear gas as they marched forward. But they marched anyway because they believed in that promise in our Constitution, and they believed if they didn't do it, no one would. But if they did it, if they stood up and marched, that they could, as they did, achieve tremendous results. And because of their work, the Voting Rights Act was enacted. And because of that, and the sacrifice, the loss of Viola Liuzzo, a Detroiter, a Wayne State student at the time, nursing student, who went to Alabama from Detroit to be a part of this march and lost her life in the midst of it. I felt a sense of responsibility to carry on her work specifically, and inspiration to say, would I have been someone who would have done that? Who would have stood at the foot of the bridge and marched forward anyway? And how can I live my life to ensure that wherever those bridges are today, I'm showing up there? And so that really was the foundation for my entire career. That was the purpose that I identified in Selma in that sort of early stage of my career that carried me forth and enabled me, among other things, to subsequently be a dean at Wayne State, her alma mater, and plant a tree in her honor with her story so that it's not forgotten and that all of us can continue to be inspired by her story just as much as I would.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your time as Secretary of State. You are now in year 7? Are we in year 7? But it wasn't always so rosy. I can remember seeing this exchange on the platform formerly known as Twitter, where President Trump referred to you as a rogue Secretary of State.
For a long time, I just had shirts that said Rogue.
Rogue, all right. Well, you got an upgrade with Warrior.
I did.
So.
Now I'm Warrior.
So that's
I still got the Rogue shirts, though.
So what was it that caused Donald Trump to get so upset? And can you tell us about that experience?
Well, believe it or not, it was a lie.
Wait, what?
It was
President of the United States?
It was misinformation. Yeah, I woke up the morning of May 20th, 2020, to alerts on my phone that the President of the United States had tweeted at me. And so that was a thing. And I thought I'd take this moment to say, I remember people being like, this is a letter that Ronald Reagan sent. It is framed on my wall, right? We always sort of revered communications from the President of the United States. And here was a tweet on social media targeting me, a lowly state election official in Michigan, because in his words, I had sent ballots out to every Michigan voter in May of 2020 to try to, I don't know, that's all he said. And then he was going to withhold federal funding as a result. So I was stunned, right? It's quite a thing to wake up in the morning and find that the President of the United States has attacked you personally on social media for doing something you didn't do, and then threatened to withhold federal funding from the entire state of Michigan as a result. So I took a beat. I wanted to just go back to sleep, forget this ever happened, but I couldn't. And so I talked through this sort of three-step process of first being sitting with those emotions. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be mad. It's, just sort of sit with the emotions as long as it takes, and then take a step back and let logic enter the equation. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't send out ballots to everyone. I sent out information on how to vote from home to everyone in our state. And you know what? So did the Republican secretaries of state in Iowa, in West Virginia, and in Georgia. They did it too, and even in Ohio. So yeah,
even Ohio?
I know where I am. And so I was like, wait a minute. And so then I thought, okay, and I didn't focus group it. I just was like, hi, Mr. President. I didn't send out ballots to every person. I sent out information on how to vote from home in the midst of a pandemic, just like my Republican colleagues in Iowa and West Virginia and Georgia. And by the way, my name's Jocelyn Benson. as a way of saying, look, you can't dehumanize me, right, in order to attack me and send others to attack me. You have to know that I'm a human, and there's ramifications for attacking humans in a democracy. And for us who are in this home in Michigan without all the security that I ultimately needed when protesters showed up to my home. So my point was simply that, and then he wrote back, and then I wrote back, and then it became a whole thing. But my point is simply that in that moment, I had the truth and the law and logic on my side. And I found in that moment that those are really powerful ways of standing up, even to the President of the United States, and how important it is that we be willing to do so. Because accountability in a democracy is critical, right? Truth in a democracy is critical. And if we all, no matter where we sit or where we find ourselves when those moments find us, if we don't sit back and leverage those powerful tools as warriors, then those who would want to make us think our voice doesn't matter will roll right over us. And that can be in a toxic workplace, in a family setting, in a community setting, or vis-a-vis the President of the United States. But we always have the power to speak out and speak the truth. And when we use that power, what happened there was that it became an entire reverberation throughout the nation that, look, this state election official stood up to the president. And can't we do the same? And that was, to me, also why this moment is so important when you see many people bending the knee, how important it is to stand up, because you don't know how many other people you will inspire to do the same. And indeed, the power of the people will always be greater than the people in power, if we leverage it, if we harness it. And that was that moment for me.
Well, you said when the president targets you, there are consequences. And you did have some serious consequences. You mentioned them briefly there. But I'm wondering if you can tell us about that experience where armed protesters came to your home after Joe Biden is declared the winner in Michigan in 2020. That in December of 2020, armed protesters outside your home with your 4-year-old son. Can you tell us what happened and how you assess that situation? Like, to me, that makes me a worrier. You know, I would say, I don't want this job because I don't want people coming to my home when my children are inside. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I would say, it's worrying is, fear, whatever, that emotion can be a useful tool. It doesn't have to lead us to conclude, I'm out. It can lead us to say, I'm worried, and so I will act, and so I will stand guard. And that was sort of what the experience was for me. I was worried and scared. When I got a call, it's how the book opens, from Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, who said, we got a indication that someone is going to show up at a female lawmaker's home tonight. We don't know who it is. And then I heard the noise and the bullhorns as I was decorating my tree with my son. And I said, it's me. They're coming for me. And what unfolded for the next 45 minutes was one neighborhood security guard standing in between my home, where I was inside with my 4-year-old son, taking him upstairs, running the bathwater very loudly so as to drown out the noise, and trying to stay calm. As parents know, we have to model the behavior, the emotions we want our kids to feel. So staying calm and peaceful, as inside I was worried and more. And then as that went on, and my husband was calling 911 and trying to get law enforcement to come, I thought, what's going to happen, right? And also, is this what it means to stand up for democracy? Like, what? How did I get here? And so I had anger, I had frustration, I had fear, I had uncertainty. Was there a bullet that was going to come into our home? Was it going to ricochet into my son's bedroom? All of these things go through your mind. And I share that to say all of that is real. But what also happened after that, sort of the second stage of that, was I thought about the folks who stood at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and I thought they were worried too. And I thought about everyone throughout history who has been called upon to stand and defend our democracy at different points, because of whom democracy prevails. And I thought about the fact that these folks outside my home, they were not protesting me. They were protesting the election and election results that the will of the people of Michigan made clear, abundantly clear. And I was proud, both as someone who took an oath to do this, but also as someone who believes in democracy, to stand at the foot of that bridge in that moment and say, not on my watch will you cause the results of the will of the people to be nullified. Not on my watch will you allow those voices, those votes, to be silenced. Millions of voters. And through that, I found my strength. Through that, I found my purpose. Still scared, but with a clear sense of what I had to do, and that was stand firm. And in fact, it ultimately even emboldened me to tell the story, to encourage others to stand firm as well. And that began the work, the movement that ultimately enabled us, despite the unfolding tragedy on January 6th at our U.S. Capitol subsequently, to still ensure democracy prevailed in that tumultuous time. And so we can use these moments of fear, of worry, of uncertainty to actually fuel our fight even more. And that, to me, is one of my primary lessons of the book. Number one, no one can define who you are without your consent. Only you have the power to define yourself and what you're going to do to the world. No matter what happens to you, you have that power. And number two, all that can happen to you can be used as a tool to make you stronger and more focused on defining who you are through your purpose and through your actions. And that really has been my story as a purposeful warrior, and was really honed and shaped in that particular moment.
Well, that's a great answer. We're almost out of time for our part, because we're going to read some audience questions in just a minute. And I've got some cards coming to me right now. Very exciting. So I want to ask you one last question before I start asking some of these questions. And that is this. From time to time, I have looked over the abyss and thought about running for public office, and have decided thank you. I've decided, no, it's not for me. Because you spend so much energy playing defense and silencing lies and facing ugliness. And yet, here you are, somebody's got, lots of options in a career, and you're running for governor. First, thank you. And second, why?
First of all, you have been a tremendous public servant through many positions, through many fields, former U.S. attorney, law professor. So thank you for your service. We can all find places to stand and do the work we want to do and to serve, and I know we've talked a lot about that over the years. For me, where I can stand right now as someone who has run and won statewide multiple times and also who has that warrior ethos at a time when I believe governors can and must be warriors for truth and for justice and for democracy in this moment, is to raise my hand and say, I'm willing to throw my hat in the ring and go for it, because I know how to stand up to the folks in DC who are, in my view, enacting very reckless economic policies at a time when the economic needs for our state and for Michiganders has never been more clear. And I believe in a Michigan where everyone can not just get by but thrive. I believe in a Michigan where even in times of challenge we can find economic prosperity for all, while also protecting rights and freedoms and making government work well. And that's what I've done as Secretary of State. So I believe in this moment governors are the guardrails, along with the rule of law, against the chaos and confusion and cruelty that we are seeing emerge out of Washington, D.C. And I'm also a mom of an 8-year-old kid, as we know, as we've talked about, who in 10 years is going to be 18. And the next 10 years will define not just his childhood, but his future. They will define whether or not he chooses to stay in Michigan and make Michigan his place to call home. And I know we all have loved ones, young and old, who we could say the same about. And I very much want Michigan to be the best place in the country to be a kid, to raise a kid, and to call home. But we're not there yet. And people are struggling to pay for childcare, to buy a home in the communities they want to live in, to put food on the table. The cost of everything is continuing to rise. And as Secretary of State, I know how to run big institutions like the state government and run it well and fix these problems, whether it be our public education system, which I believe can be in the top 10 in the country, but we're not there yet. Or economic opportunity for all, or the fact that talent continues to leave our state, when if we had our most talented folks stay here, we would be able to grow into even more other industries like clean energy and climate tech, or regenerating our film and television and arts industry as well in our state, which is a goal of mine. So there's so much we can do to make Michigan that place where everyone wants to call home. And I found that that in moments like this, staying in the fight is the way to get there. And I'll work with anyone to help build that economic prosperity, just like I've worked with everyone and anyone to protect the rights and freedoms of Michiganders. But I'm also very clear about who I am, and I will stand up to anyone who gets in the way of those goals as well.
All right, I now bring you your questions. First, this is a great question. I hear it a lot, and I'm curious about your answer. What are the most significant ways or things an average citizen can do to fight for democracy?
So in the back of the book, there's a list of 9. But it begins and ends with having the courage to take the first step and not give up, right? Like it seems like a simple, obvious thing, but it can be the hardest thing in a moment like this, to check out. Don't check out. Instead, find ways, large and small, to choose courage over fear and to stand up to those who may be trying to rip apart what you see as a challenging thing. Now, when it comes to fighting, being purposeful means you don't have to fight on every battlefront. You don't have to show up for every battle. You can choose your battles. You can be strategic. You can be practical and purposeful about it. If you're a mom, standing up for your kid to make sure they have access to quality education, or maybe it's just clean water that they can drink, or clean air that they can breathe. If you're a small business owner, helping other small business owners work in this challenging time where there's great confusion about where you're going to get your inventory from, perhaps, to find ways to navigate this time and also advocate for your state lawmakers and others to do more to help support you during this uncertain time as tariffs change on a daily, hourly basis. So it begins and ends with being courageous and staying in the fight, but it also can be furthered by staying focused on one or two issues that you care about. For me, a long part of my career was voting. I just wanted everyone to be able to vote. And as the chief motor vehicle officer, I just want government to work well for everyone, right? Like wait times down, turnout up, right? Like something simple that you can focus on. Be metric driven, and there's a whole chapter on being mission driven. There's a chapter I talk about surrounding yourself with others who will support you in this mission. So this book really is a how-to guide for how we can stand up for ourselves and our nation and our communities in this moment, through stories, successes and failures of my own life in that regard. But it's ultimately, the end of the day, is just don't check out. Don't allow anyone else to define who you are or the community you live in this moment, or what we can and can't do about the problems that we see. And see challenging, turbulent times like this one as an opportunity for strength, to grow strength, to be stronger. Everything that our democracy has gone through over these last 10 years, over these last 7 years, as I've served as Secretary of State, it has been challenging, it has been turbulent, it has been rife with uncertainty, from a global pandemic to attacks on our election workers to the rise of misinformation and the challenges that social media and foreign adversaries present on that front. But through it all, I have believed, and we are seeing this, that our democracy can actually emerge from this moment stronger and more healthier than ever before, because more people are fighting for it now than they did in 2014 when I started this journey. More people are engaged now. More people are voting now. So we can find also signs of strength even in turbulent moments, and those can propel us forward to ensure we embrace challenges as an opportunity to get stronger, better, and more focused on our purpose.
Here's a legal question that we have from the audience. And yeah, we're going to ask you. Jocelyn Benson is a graduate of Harvard Law School. Heard of it. I don't know if you can hear my eyes rolling in my head.
It's not as highly ranked at U of M Law School right now, but, right? U of M Law is through the roof.
Oh, yeah. We're knocking it out of the park.
You are. Best public university in the country?
Absolutely.
Best public law school in the country?
Absolutely. Here's the question. What do you think should happen if the Trump administration does not adhere to Supreme Court rulings? Did they teach you that at Harvard Law School? I don't think so.
It's called federalism. Remember when I said governors are guardrails? So are the state courts. So are state judges. So is other federal courts as well. So are there are law enforcement entities that answer to governors, not presidents. So there are other tools in the toolbox in a country like ours, where federalism is part of the checks and balances that we have, and it's one of the reasons why I believe governors have to be prepared to enforce the Constitution if the President of the United States is unwilling to do so.
Here's a question, again, about the current presidential administration's efforts to gut the Environmental Protection Agency. Michigan is a state where we have incredible environmental resources, but also some very significant environmental challenges with the Great Lakes, groundwater, clean energy, and other kinds of things. How would you prioritize working on these environmental issues as governor?
I want Michigan to be a leader, not just in the Midwest, but nationwide, for solving some of our nation's most pressing climate challenge issues. I believe with institutions like the University of Michigan and League of Conservation Voters and others throughout our state, not to mention our state officials and agencies, that we actually can invest and grow a climate tech industry that can actually, through innovation and manufacturing, solve a lot of create solutions to a lot of our most challenging, pressing issues with climate change, and show the nation how to lead on this front. So to me, it's a priority, I think it's an economic development opportunity, it's It's a personal opportunity to make sure we are investing in mechanisms to deliver clean air and clean water to all of our residents. But again, I see the tragedy and the travesty at the EPA that is unfolding and continues to unfold as we run away from previous climate agreements and the like as an opportunity to acknowledge the challenging moment that we're in and also find ways that Michigan can lead the nation out of it. There are states like Washington where Governor Inslee has shown the ways to enact state policy and other types of administrative decisions to invest in a climate tech industry that can develop solutions to addressing climate change. Massachusetts and other states are leading on this as well. I want Michigan to be right up in there, developing these solutions and helping to lead the nation out of this moment so that we can not just preserve our own fresh water and Great Lakes and our position as stewards of those jewels, but also we can really solve some of the most pressing issues around climate change that are affecting all of us, not just, again, even in this nation, but around the globe.
Save our Great Lakes. We appreciate that. Here's an interesting question. I hear this a lot, and I kind of feel it. It feels like too many Democrats are afraid to be as unapologetic as Republicans are, and as politically left as Republicans are politically right. Do you think this is a strategic mistake that Democrats should correct?
The number one thing I found as someone who's been elected as a Democrat statewide multiple times, especially in this moment, is how important it is. It sounds simple, but how important it is to listen to the struggles and the pain that so many residents are enduring right now, from the Upper Peninsula to rural parts of the state, to here in Washtenaw County, to as far south as Monroe and as far west as Muskegon and everywhere in between. I think, in my view, the economic challenges that so many residents of our state find ourselves in provide an opportunity for the Democratic Party to be the party that provides the solution for addressing those struggles, for making homeownership more affordable, for ensuring our water is clean to drink and our air is clean to breathe, for helping to push and build coalitions to push our schools to be in the top 10 nationwide. All of these things is in my view, I mean, I'm a Democrat because we're the party of the Voting Rights Act. We're a party that stands and protects every voice and every vote. And in doing so, enables solutions that lift all boats because we all do better when we all do better. So I see, and I think you see success among particularly Democrats running for governor who push for these types of visions. Abigail Spanberger's emulating it quite well in her candidacy in Virginia to talk about the economic struggles that everyone is dealing with, Democrat, Republican, and independent, and everyone else in between those buckets, and develop tangible solutions and then implement them and get things done. That's what I've done as Secretary of State. That's what I'll do as governor, and I believe successful leaders in this state all owe it to the people to actually deliver on those real solutions and move the needle to ensure everyone can thrive in our state.
Dang, she might win. When you're governor, can I come visit you at the mansion on Mackinac Island?
We'll work
that looks really cool.
We'll work together. How about that?
All right. Go. All right.
There will always be a place for you in my administration.
Thank you. We've got just another minute before it's time to break to sign some books. And so let's just end on a hopeful note. What is it that gives you hope? Is there any hope that we can all take away and take home tonight? These are some pretty bleak times. We're looking for a little hope. What hope can you offer us?
I mean, you all provided me with hope, and I mean it, because you're here tonight. It's an act of hope. It's an act of optimism. It's an act of a willingness to not give up, but to keep fighting. I know throughout history, and that's what I talk about in this book, the only thing that is, our country has been in dark moments before, mired in division, in strife, in disunity and confusion and chaos. But we've always emerged out the other side stronger and better than we were going in. That arc has consistently bent towards justice because the people demand it. Too oftentimes leaders let us down. But it is when citizens like you demand that they step up and have a backbone and courage to fight for all of us that we can actually see things move. So for me, it's why I love voting, because voting is your tangible way of holding people accountable and electing people who reflect your values, all of us, and making sure every voice is heard. It's like legally enforced that every voice is heard. And so to me, as long as folks are voting, as long as folks are engaged, as long as we're fighting, as long as we're showing up and pushing for the change that we know our communities deserve and the people we care about deserve, We're going to be okay. Just can't give up. And that's what gives me hope, because I know all of you are here tonight because you don't want to give up. I'm not giving up either. So let's go.
Jocelyn Benson, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you everybody for coming out. So we still have books for sale at Literati's table in the back. So our signing line is going to start in the front of the stage. It is going to wrap around to the side. There's a little stanchion with a sign on it. And Secretary Benson will